Well, how you age is, and get this, how you age is in large part determined by what you eat. This is Growing Bolder. I'm Bill Schaefer with Mark Middleton, and that statement is the focus of a very interesting book called The New Rules of Aging Well, a simple program for immune resistance that is causing a lot of people to rethink some of the things they thought were good and discovering that many of the things we blame on the fact that we're getting older may not have anything to do with that at all.
Bill, I'm going to add one thing to what you said. How we age is based a lot on what we eat, but also what we think. I think it ties into this. There's a lot of ageist myths out there. And, that's the business we're in, folks, busting the myths. If you have aches and pains, that is not normal. It's not a normal part of aging. If you're feeling lethargic, that is not necessarily a normal part of aging. If you think you're doing fine with less sleep, well, that's not the result of getting older. And our next guest says you can do something about all of this stuff. This guy is the founder of the 1111 Wellness Center, which is in New York City. He's the chief medical officer of the Wellness Club that's called The Well. He is the author of 6 best-selling books, including The New Rules of Aging Well, which is why we are anxious to talk to him because we want to hear what they are. Let's say hello to Dr. Frank Lipman. Doc, how you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. I appreciate it. It's great to have you here. And your area of expertise is integrative and functional medicine, which you call the good medicine, which makes me a little nervous because it implies that there is the bad medicine. What do you mean by the good medicine?
I don't call it the good medicine. I just call it good medicine. What I'm saying is you combine Western medicine when it's appropriate for crisis care. If you're having a heart attack or acute pneumonia, or you burst your appendix, you break a bone, Western medicine is great. It's great for crisis care. But if you're tired and you can't poop and you've got a headache or you've got these low-grade chronic problems, Western medicine is not particularly helpful.
Now, you started to write this book, this amazing book on aging, and then the pandemic happened, and everybody started to wonder about our immune systems. As we get older, do they just weaken, or is that another one of those myths?
Well, yeah, I think as we get older, things change. There's no question about that. And yes, our immune system does weaken to a certain extent, but that doesn't mean it has to weaken to a large extent. It's, why it weakens is determined by how we sleep, how we deal with stress, what we eat, when we eat, how kind we are to others, if we're holding on to resentment, how you're talking about earlier, how you think. So all these factors affect how we age and affect our immune system.
I think the pandemic has a lot of silver linings, if you will. Obviously, it's been tragic. It was a big pause in all of our lives. But as we begin to come out of it, there's an exclamation point on many things. And I think one of them is our overall health and well-being, our overall commitment to aging well. And of course, your new book is called The New Rules of Aging Well. Can you share with us what some of those are? What have you learned during this research?
Well, probably one of the most important things is, we all eat too much. It's important what you eat, but how much we eat, especially in America, we eat too much food. And actually, there's so much research showing that just eating fewer amount of calories in general is actually good for the aging process, which makes sense because as we get older, our capacity to repair cells and to get rid of cellular waste decreases. So the more you eat, the more cellular waste you're going to create. So it's just putting more strain on your body the more you eat. So eating less is quite important. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of fasting or intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, because that's quite an easy way to just end up eating less when you're eating for a shorter period of time. So for instance, I haven't had breakfast yet. It's 11 o'clock my time. So my first meal is usually around somewhere between 11 and 12. It's usually about 16 hours after I eat dinner. And because of that, I'll usually just have 2 meals a day. So it's an easy way to eat less by just doing intermittent fasting. You tend to eat 2 meals rather than 3 meals.
All right, we're talking with Dr. Frank Lipman, and Doctor, you've just hit on one of the things about your book that really hit home to me. It wasn't like you are on this mount on high delivering a sermon to the rest of us. You're right in there with us. I mean, even you had a journey of discovery. You, a guy who always ate as healthy as you could, suddenly found that you were pre-diabetic. I mean, how is that possible? What did you learn from that?
I learned quite a lot. I learned not to believe what I thought was correct. I grew up in South Africa eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, and then I became this holistic doctor, thinking that red meat was bad and you need to eat a lot of grains. And I was sort of mainly pescatarian. And about I can't remember how long ago, probably about 15 years ago. When I did my bloods, I realized my blood sugar was high and I was pre-diabetic. And I just realized I was eating too many grains and too much fruit for what my body could metabolize. As we get older, our capacity to metabolize carbohydrates decreases. And for me, obviously, it's a genetic thing. I have a genetic predisposition. That was the case. So I started eating red meat again, and I became more of a paleo type of eater. And my blood sugars resolved, back to normal. I lost weight and I felt much better. So, there's no one right diet for everyone. But then I realized that, I needed to eat, much fewer carbs. And now as I've gotten older, now that I'm 66, and when I did research on the book, I came to realize that eating too much animal protein may not be good for the longevity gene. So I'm still sort of paleo, but I eat just a little bit less of animal protein.
Dr. Frank Lipman has written a provocative new book, The New Rules of Aging Well. And Doc, I think you partially answered one of my frustrations. I'm always bothered by the fact that the medical community will tell us coffee is good, coffee is bad, dairy is good, dairy is bad, red meat is good, on and on and on. We are not bio-identical. We are all individuals. But that said, how can we find out what's good for us short of genetic testing? Is there a way for us to figure out, is it just by trial and error what works?
Well, as you point out, I think genetic testing is extremely helpful. I think blood testing is extremely helpful. I think testing can be helpful, but ultimately one really needs to listen to one's body, which, most of us find very difficult. But if you're putting on weight, if you're not feeling vital, if you're not sleeping well, if you're having more aches and pains, you need to look to see why things are not working as well as they should. It's the metaphor I always use. If you're driving your car and the oil light goes on, you don't put a Band-Aid over the oil light. You see why the oil light goes on. So if you're starting to have symptoms in your body, which happens as you get older, you've got to see why you're having those symptoms. Why is that oil light going on? And you got to, so this is what, you asked what we mentioned functional medicine in the beginning. Functional medicine looks at what are the underlying causes of why you present with problems. So yes, I think genetic testing is helpful, blood testing is helpful, but ultimately you got to look at what you're eating, how you're sleeping, how you're dealing with stress, how you're moving your body. All these factors are going to affect how you feel.
Well, really, that's no fun at all. I mean, don't you have a pill that'll take care of it for us instead of us actually having to do something? I mean, it's a joke, but it's a great point because it seems that the next model of medicine is going to center around us. We're going to be, wearing our watches, using our technology and apps to monitor our own health.
I think that is the next frontier of medicine, this combination of self-monitoring. For instance, I wear my Oura ring and, I monitor my sleep. I mean, I think you've got to be careful not becoming too obsessed, but I think self-monitoring is very important. And even a lot of the blood testing, genetic testing, poop testing, a lot of this, you're going to start getting more and more of these tests you're going to be able to do them at home. So I do think that's the next frontier, this real personalized medicine where you are actually in charge of your own health.
And Dr. Lipman, understanding that we are all individuals and there may not be anything that's really good or really bad for any of us. Is there one thing that you can tell us we should all be eating more of? And is there one thing that you can say with certainty we should not be eating?
Yeah, sugar and starches. Yeah, no one should be eating, look, sugar should be, it's like a drug. It's just, if you want to dabble with drugs, that's fine, but just dabble with it. So as little sugar as possible, as few starches as possible, that's for most people. In terms of what we all, and then I would say, vegetable oils, what we cook with are probably almost as bad as sugar, but we can get into that if you want to. And then what should we all be eating? Probably lots of leafy greens. I'm a big fan of bone broth. It's not so much one thing. It's probably more important what you should be avoiding than what you should be eating. Well, actually, if I had to choose one thing everyone should eat, would be eating the stalks and stems of your vegetables, because most of us cut that away. And the stalks and the stems are not only feeding us, but they're actually feeding our bacteria. They, what we call prebiotics. They feed the good bacteria. And that's really important. You've got to think of not only what you feed yourself, but what you feed your bacteria in your gut.
Wow, that's great stuff. If we're going to be our own best advocates here, what is it when we go to the doctor? What should we be looking at? Is it cholesterol? Is it triglycerides? Or is it just genetic testing to see what we're predisposed to? How do we know if we're on the right track, and how do we know if we're improving?
Right. So genetic testing is not really done by physicians, unfortunately, and genetic testing can sort of just fine-tune things. But, it's this great question about what blood tests. The standard cholesterol test is almost a waste of time. If you really want to check your lipids, you need an advanced lipid profile, which not only checks the cholesterol, but it checks, the particle size of the cholesterol. And it gives you some other markers as well. And it checks for other inflammatory markers. It checks for oxidized cholesterol. But if you are just going to get the standard cholesterol test, which is unfortunately what most doctors do, what's more important than your cholesterol number is this ratio of the triglycerides to your HDL. So if you're only going to get that test, you want your triglycerides to your HDL to be less than 2. Would be is a good number. But ideally, you should get what we call an advanced lipid profile. It's much more helpful than just a regular cholesterol test.
All great stuff. If I may, Doc, I want to go back to what you mentioned before. In your last answer, you started talking about bacteria in the gut. It's almost become a buzzword lately, our microbiome.
Sure.
Everybody talks about it. Everybody writes about it. I think most people don't really understand what it is, how important it is, and how we can optimize it. Can you talk just a little bit about our microbiome and how it informs our health?
Sure. So the microbiome is really this collection of trillions of bacteria that live in and on us. And the most important microbiome is in our gut. Although we have in our mouth, our armpits, women in their vaginal areas, they're all over our bodies, on our skin. But the gut microbiome is really key, because if you think about it, the gut and your gut lining is your internal barrier to the external world. It's your barrier to all the food that you're eating. And like the skin on the outside, this lining of your gut protects you from this outside world. And it's the microbiome, which is sort of part of what's protecting this very thin lining, which is protecting you from the outside world. So this the composition of your microbiome is really key to your health. So apart from protecting your gut lining, or which will protect you from inflammation, which is one of the main factors of aging, the microbiome makes vitamins, it can make hormones, it makes neurochemicals. For instance, there are more neurochemicals like serotonin, which is a happy chemical. There's more of that made in your gut than in your brain. So this gut and the microbiome is also called a second brain. So this gut is not only this microbiome not only protecting you from the outside world, it's part of the second brain, which is probably as important as your what we think of as the brain. And it's important to remember that 70% of your immune system is in and around your gut. So, the composition of your microbiome is really key to your health and aging in particular.
But this is great. We can hear the passion coming from you, and it's nice to talk to a physician who's excited about the information that he has to disseminate. And these are great specifics. I want to back out just a little bit because we talked a lot. Mark mentioned off the top that aches and pains, things that we assume, and at least, doctor, that we're similar age. And when we were growing up, we thought that, man, getting old, that's the worst. You're going to sit in a chair when you're 50 and wait around to die. It's not that way, is it? Aches and pains are not normal. Feeling lethargic is not normal. The things we associate with growing old. So as you've moved into this demographic with the rest of us, what is your outlook towards aging?
Well, now I have a grandson. I want to stay as healthy and vital as long as possible. I mean, my outlook is it's not about prolonging your lifespan, which is important, but it's about prolonging your health span, how long you stay healthy and vital. So I want to, stay healthy and vital till my 90s, 100, or whenever it is, and then maybe take a week or whatever and drop dead. So it's about staying vital and healthy and enjoying your life as much as you can every day of your life. So it's not that things don't change. Sure, the way I exercise has changed. I don't run anymore because I screwed up my knee. I ride my bike. I take, I take more care of, for instance, I'll sauna more often. I'll stretch more often. I just take a little bit more care of my body. I pay more attention to my sleep. I don't take things as for granted as I used to. And I think the other important thing as you get older, and it's really happened to me, I think you start realizing the importance of community, of not holding on to resentment and being angry, being grateful for what you have, being kind to others, being kind to yourself. So these intangibles become even more I think important and meaningful in one's life. But I think it's important for people to realize it's not that things don't change as you get older. It's normal to age, but how well you age and the speed of aging is determined by how you live your life.
Well, your book is called The New Rules of Aging Well, Dr. Lipman, but I got to tell you, you are right now preaching from the book of Boulder, because this is what Bill and I talk about every day: health span, compressing our morbidity, the importance of staying socially connected as we age. I can't tell you how grateful we are for people like you in the medical profession who are lifelong learners, who are not only repeating what they learned in a textbook 30 years ago, but are continuing to grow and absorb and share with the rest of us. So I guess the big question is, from your seat, and maybe not just specific to diet or exercise or anything else, what makes for a life well lived? What's the moral of the story? What should we all know about creating a life of significance?
Yeah, I mean, what I've realized, and also just from observing thousands and thousands of my patients, I've been a physician for over 40 years now. I think the people who age the best, I mean, yes, it's about, eating and moving their bodies and sleeping, etc. But people who have meaning in their life, people who are passionate about something, and the meaning in their life can be some huge, changing the world, but it can also just be spending time with their family. So I think people who wake up in the morning and feel like there's some meaning, they feel good about and passionate about what they're doing, I think those are probably more important than what we eat and how we exercise. Not that I'm saying those aren't important. And I just want to thank you guys for doing this work. I mean, I think a lot of this is just common sense. This is not medical. Sure, we're now finding out about the longevity genes and how you can influence them. But a lot of this, a lot of what I practice and what I do for myself and my patients comes from common sense and just old ancient wisdom. So it's about using, common sense, ancient wisdom, and then, mixing that with a lot of what we're learning now from new research on longevity genes and how we can age well. And a lot of it comes back to those old things we learned from thousands and thousands of years ago.
This has been such a fantastic conversation, and it's also a kind of apparent that the greater our technology gets, the more research and discoveries that we make, the more, just like Dr. Lipman says, the more we realize that it is the things that we already know. You've got to live a healthy life, a vibrant life. You've got to be optimistic, positive. You've got to take care of yourself. You don't overeat. You don't under-exercise. You just be active and be vital. And those are the kind of things that are included in this book. It's called The New Rules of Aging. And if you'd like to learn more about it or find out more about our guest, because his story is fascinating, there's a whole different side we could touch on as well. We'd love to have him back again. But you could find all that out at Dr. Frank Lipman, Lipman.com. And Mark, what a great guest. I mean, to me, the overarching message there is you're not predetermined to follow your genetics. If you live well and live right, your wellness level can pretty much stretch almost your entire lifespan.
You're talking about epigenetics now, Bill, and I'll bet the doctor mentions that, and we can certainly get him back. But yeah, it is really, really great that there are people out there like Dr. Frank Lipman, who, we often say here at Growing Bolder, folks, that, who's your primary care physician? It's you. We've got to prescribe healthy lifestyle to ourselves, and then we have to act upon it. And, this is a guy who is like he said, it's common sense, but he's got the academic credential, Bill, the research credentials that we don't. We share what we learn from real people that are living these kind of lives. He's sharing what he has learned from research and studies and everything else. And, when the two come together, it makes a very compelling argument.
And I love that he came with specifics, Mark. I mean, he had really good, useful information. But again, backing out for me, I'm not sure how it is for you in your life, but I hear so many people, and I find myself falling into the trap as well of thinking, well, gee, I should find a supplement so my knee doesn't hurt as much, or I should take a pill so my mood is increased or I feel a little better. When we can increase our wellness, we can increase our vitality by what we eat and how we live. I mean, it's almost, we're not even conditioned to think like that.
One of my takeaways, Bill, is I'm going to go get an advanced lipid profile.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that for a while, and I have been fascinated, and I think you can get taken advantage of. There are companies out there now that will, based upon some genetic or blood testing, will fabricate for you and deliver to you vitamins that are specific for you. So, to your point, you're not just taking, water soluble vitamins that you don't need that you're just going to, excrete later in the day. It would be really cool. I love the fact that they could figure out what I need as an individual and then deliver it to me. It's really exciting.
You've done a lot of reading about the longevity gene. He mentioned that. I don't know much about that. Is that the telomeres thing, Mark, that you talk about many times in your public speaking?
Well, I think we could be talking about different things, but yes, telomeres are the caps on the ends of our chromosome, and they've been likened to a biological clock. They all shorten as we get older, but what we have learned through a lot of research is that our lifestyle, to a large extent, can slow the shortening of our telomeres. Some people now say that, we can actually lengthen them. I'm not sure that has been proven, but, it has been proven that, even at a genetic level, our cells are listening to our thoughts. We need to think good things. We have to believe that more is possible. It's so easy to buy into the ageist messages of our culture that we all but guarantee that we will in fact embrace the negative ageist stereotypes that are everywhere. So it is great to know that more is possible, but we have to believe it. We have to internalize it. And what is really interesting to me, if you really want to get out into the wild kind of stuff, is that you can change your genetics by the way that you think. So if you believe and you think that more is possible, what a legacy that you're leaving for your grandkids, because ultimately generation after generation, if we can believe that more is possible, we're passing that on, through our thoughts to our ancestors, or to our future ancestors, which I think is really cool.
Well, this is a great conversation to everybody, no matter where you are in life or what you're doing. And unfortunately, it's a kind of conversation you don't hear every day, but you should. So Frank Lipman, I mean, he came to help people. He wasn't just selling a book. He had tips and a philosophy and a point of view. And Mark, to be able to expand on this is what we do here at Growing Bolder, folks. And please let friends of yours and people you care about know about this program and these interviews, because it's a conversation that we all need to have. Great information from Dr. Frank Lipman on how we all can make the rest of our life the best of our life.